Hello, hello, everybody. How's it going today? Happy Wednesday. It is my normal Wednesday spot to go live. So I am streaming this in multiple places. You may be watching this on my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not in it, you need to come join, even if you are not fitting of that description. If you are a man, that's fine. Come on in. Go search for us. Again, it's Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners on Facebook. Also, my business page is Balanced CFO, Jamie Troll. You can also follow me there. And this is also streaming live on my Jamie Troll YouTube channel. So I hope you like and subscribe over there as well. So you can see me in all of those places right now. So wherever you're watching me, hello, nice to see you. I will make sure to say this is May 6th, I believe. The only reason I know that is because yesterday was Cinco de Mayo. So we had tacos for dinner. That's basically the only way I know what the heck day it is anymore. Hey, Karen, I see people joining. So say hey when you're here. Give me a like or a heart to let me know you guys are here and can hear me. So today we're going to be talking just about EIDL. So I know we've been talking about a lot of different topics. We've been talking about unemployment. We've been talking about PPP. We've been talking about all these things. And sometimes it's probably just all going a little bit nutty in your head. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes it just feels like there's a million different things happening. And so I wanted to focus in on one topic. Now, we will talk about how that one topic does impact those other things, but I wanted to really deep dive into this because I've been getting a lot of questions on EIDL specifically. And I know we've spent so much time talking about PPP lately. Now we're going to talk about EIDL. And if you don't know what I'm saying, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, okay? That's an SBA type 7B, if you ever hear that. It is a type of loan that is being offered by the SBA. So we're going to hone in specifically on that. And I'm actually going to show you guys some of my screen as well, which I don't always do, but I want to actually walk you through some of the specific wording so that you can see it for yourself and kind of make any determinations that you can off of that. Because a lot of this stuff, as we know, as I've been telling everybody every single day, it's changing constantly. This stuff is changing constantly, and that makes it difficult. I get that makes it difficult for me as I'm trying to explain it to you, but that makes it really difficult as a business owner for you guys to know what you should be doing in your business when things are constantly changing. So I'm just going to give you the update for where we are today, but I also want to first tell you a little bit about the program itself, just to make sure everybody's on the same playing field. So again, we're talking about EIDL, loan/grant/advanced, okay? You may have heard different terms. We're talking about the same program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, okay? So here is really the rundown of what that is. The EIDL, I think a lot of people think that this is new with the CARES Act. It's not. So economic injury disaster loans have always existed. Well, I won't say always existed, but have existed for a long time. Those are loans that you can typically get whenever there's an emergency that's been declared for your area, right? So there's a tornado, your county might be declared a disaster zone or something similar to that. And therefore, you have access to these economic injury disaster loans. Again, it's usually something that is a natural disaster of sorts, right? So these are things typically an EIDL loan, and I know I'm saying it, I cringe every time I say EIDL loan because I'm basically saying economic injury disaster loan. Sorry, guys, I know for some of you that might drive you crazy as well, but it just makes it easier because the grant portion is separate. But typically these loans have always existed. And they are available for those specific situations and only if you're in affected areas. Now, with the fact that the entire United States was declared effectively a disaster area of sorts, an emergency situation, right, for coronavirus, all of a sudden everybody was able to apply. And that was, I think, in early March or so, it opened up to everybody. Certain areas that were harder hit were able to apply earlier. But for everybody, roundabout the beginning to middle of March, this program became available. So some people started applying, and there was a whole long form process. This idea of the advanced/grant didn't exist yet. That was what the CARES Act put in. But before that, the loan existed. So you could apply And the hope was it usually is to support your operating costs, those main operating costs that you have for your business, for business continuity that you need for a period of 6 months. That's generally what EIDL is for. So what happened with the CARES Act is they said, okay, we're going to expand this, and we're going to say anybody that applies for these, we know that the processing takes a while, right? For these loans themselves, there's a whole process to go through to get approved. Even the application, when we talk about, you may have heard people talking about the long form application. That was the application that was available for the EIDL loans before the 29th of March. And it was a lot more substantive than the short form, which was like 3 pages and you could do it in 5 minutes, right? So the long form, you had to give a whole bunch of documents to them. It felt like more of like a loan application, right? The short form shortcut it because they knew, hey, we need to be able to have a mechanism to get people money fast, because that was the intention of the CARES Act. So I'm going to show you the CARES Act real quick, and you guys can have a nice little chuckle with me over what the CARES Act said and then what happened in reality, which a lot of you guys are sitting in that place of reality right now. Okay, so let me throw this up on the screen really quickly. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, I'm gonna have to zoom in here a little bit so that you can see it better. Okay, so basically, this is the section. Whoop, I got a little big. This is the section. It's section, if you actually, if anybody, I don't know if y'all want to spend some time reading 880 pages. I've read it. It's not the most exciting thing to read, but section 1110 is on the emergency EIDL grants. And it talks about eligibility, can't have more than 500 employers, yada, yada, yada. Let's get down to the good stuff, right? So this section E is on the emergency grant. Now I'm going to first skip down to the amount, okay? Because you guys have heard the amount, right? What it says in here is the amount of the advance provided under this subsection shall not be more than $10,000, right? Shall not be more. So, okay, I get it. You're saying it's up to $10,000, but who decides that? That's the question. So I think a lot of people assumed that the grant was going to be for $10,000 for every business that applied. And I actually think that was a correct assumption at the time. And I'm going to show you exactly why. So even though this says up to 10,000, if you come here and read this, then I'll read the portion that really matters. Okay, so let's skip the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. You know, an entity that can apply, right, that applies for a loan under this subsection in response to COVID-19 may request that the administrator provide an advance that is subject to paragraph 3 in the amount requested by such applicant. In the amount requested by such applicant. Do you guys see anything in there that says the SBA gets to come up with arbitrary rules for how much of that money they give you? I don't see it. It says in the amount requested by such applicant to such applicant within 3 days. Let's all chuckle a little bit at the thought, right? Many of you guys are still sitting around waiting for an advance you applied for over a month ago, right? This grant advance that was supposed to be, the whole point of this entire thing was to say, you know what? Businesses need money fast. They need it now. And we're going to put in a mechanism that essentially allows them access to quick money that they can use so that they don't have to shut down their whole business, right? That was really the point. It was to help with business continuity during this time frame. That didn't happen. That 3 days came and went, and there was no mention. I mean, most people applied using the short form. They clicked the box, yes, I want to be considered for the grant, right? And then they heard nothing. You got a confirmation number at the end that should have started with a 3, and then it was radio silence for weeks. Right? Weeks. And then maybe you got, there's been a couple of kind of stock emails that have gone out, like mass emails that have gone out, which don't mean really anything, by the way, guys. I know a lot of people have been posting these emails. Does this mean I'm getting my loan offer soon? Does this mean I'm getting my advance soon? No. The email that came out over the last couple of days has basically just been saying, hey, bear with us. This is taking a while. You're in process. You'll get it someday, right? Or we'll get to you someday, not even that you'll get it someday. So that has been kind of an interesting thing to see how that specifically has unfolded, because it's clearly not in line with the intention of the CARES Act. Okay. So I just, I wanted to show this to you so you could see why some people kind of feel bamboozled a little bit that, wait a second, it was supposed to be it was intended to be $10,000 per applicant. What happened was they had a ton of people that said, whoa, free money, I need money now, obviously, and ran toward it as fast as they could. And they couldn't keep up. They did not have the ability to deliver on that promise. And the funding was running low too. So instead of requesting more funding for this, $10 billion was set aside for the advances. They had, and this was the original, in the original CARES Act, it gave $10 billion towards these advances. And because there were so many applicants, they made this, the SBA, not Congress, the SBA came up with this $1,000 per employee. Okay, so instead of $10,000, it became $1,000 per employee, or $1,000 if you were a sole proprietor yourself. Now, they gave no indication also on the application whether it was full-time employees, part-time employees. Some people were including independent contractors because there was just no guidance. So that was, and they basically seemed to be basing the grant based on whatever number you put on the application. And different people, thought about that in different ways. So that has been interesting too, to see the inconsistency in how that has rolled out. Additionally, let me come down to, let's find it. Okay, an applicant shall not be required to repay any amounts of an advance provided under this subsection, even if subsequently denied a loan under blah, blah, blah. Okay, what does that mean? It's yours to keep, right? That's how I read it. It's yours to keep. And it is. And it is. Here's the thing that's gotten me a little bit riled up is one of the reasons I believe that this has kind of gotten backlogged, and there are several, right? But one of the reasons is because of the fact that they're checking credit in some cases. Not in all. We don't understand. Some people are getting their credit checked before they get their advance. Some aren't. Why? I don't know. It seems relatively random, but they probably have some kind of process on their back end for who they need to check credit for and who they don't. I've also heard tell that some people are getting denied their advance because of credit. But I've also heard some people who don't have any credit or have really bad credit are still getting their advance. So it seems really inconsistent as to what they are doing. In my opinion, the intent of the CARES Act, while it doesn't say specifically like you can't check credit, right? If it's a grant and if it's not repayable, even in the event you don't qualify for a loan, right? Like totally credit should be accounted for when you're getting an actual loan that you need to repay back. That makes sense. But money you don't have to repay back, why are they even looking at credit for that? Why does that even make sense? And why should they deny giving you money because of credit, even though you don't have to pay it back? So for me, I have that's one of the things that it seems more lately they're checking less credit. And I don't know if it's because of this factor where maybe they've gotten their hands slapped or had enough people say, hey, what's going on with this credit checking on this? Because I thought I got to keep it anyway. Why are you checking my credit just for the advance? So anywho, just wanted to kind of go into what the CARES Act actually says, because I think that's important. Now, while we're looking at this, let's also look at what it says about what you can use it for, because we get that question a lot as well. What can I use this money for? I don't want to use it wrong. I got this thing. It just dropped in my bank account, which it will, you guys, right? If you haven't gotten it yet, keep checking. It just drops in there. And a lot of people forgot they applied for this thing. So I see a lot of posts like that, which are people saying, wait, I just got, $1,000 that showed up in my bank account. What is this? It says SBA something. And they didn't even remember they had applied for this because it was so long ago and there's been so much going on since then. So it is your EIDL advance. You don't have to pay it back, but. So we'll get into the but here in a minute, and the but relates to PPP, but we'll get into that. So, but let's first go into what you can use the EIDL funds for. Okay, what can you use it for? They can use for any allowable purpose for a loan made under this section, including providing paid sick leave to employees unable to work, maintaining payroll to retain employees, meeting increased cost to obtain materials unavailable from the applicant's original source due to interrupted supply chains. Okay, that's a really specific one, but all right. making rent or mortgage payments. And here's the big one, right? Repaying obligations that cannot be met due to revenue losses. This is kind of I wouldn't call it a catch-all, but it's a catch most. It's essentially working capital, meaning if you need money, if you like business continuity, right? If you have obligations that you need to pay, if you have suppliers you need to pay, if you have, whatever it is, if you have outstanding debts you need to pay, or, need to have those things to keep your business going, if you need to buy inventory, if you need to, whatever it is to keep your business up and running, right? Then that would count for the EIDL. It's broader than PPP. PPP is meant to be mainly payroll with a few other things that you can roll in there. This is much broader. Also, you notice there is no time limit that is put into the EIDL. You don't have to spend it over 8 weeks. You don't have to, none of that. So the advance you get to keep, right? And this what you can use the funds for. This is true for both the grant and the loan. All right. Now, will you have to prove you used it on that to get the grant forgiven? No, the grant is automatically forgiven. Should you still document what you're using these proceeds for in case you are ever asked? 100%. So I get that question a lot, like, why do I need to document it if if I don't have to apply for forgiveness like PPP? Because you want to have that support if ever you're audited, if ever, they will be going in to take a sample of these loans. Are they going to take a bunch of $1,000 advances and go track those down? No, but they are going to take a sample of all of PPP, of these EIDL, of all of this, and make sure you're using it appropriately. All right. Now, if you're not doing anything fraudulent, if you're doing your best, you're going to be fine. I know a lot of people are worried about fraud, and that word gets thrown around a lot. They did have a fraud case with PPP, I will say, that happened this week, their first fraud case. And it was a couple of brothers who basically totally made up a bunch of businesses and got $500,000-$600,000 worth of PPP money for them. They made the businesses up. They falsified documents. Those guys are going down for fraud, right? So what I would say, the one caution I'm giving people with using EIDL, right, is don't use it to expand your business. Meaning, because this is an emergency, remember, emergency is in the wording. Emergency. Emergency means I need this loan because my revenue is down and I need it to pay my obligations, right? It doesn't mean you can't have emergency cash that you could also use. It just means look, things are, I am negatively impacted and I need some help to make sure that I can make it through this time period, right? There's not a specific on how down your business has to be able to get this and to say it was needed, all of that kind of thing. If you're impacted at all and you're worried you will be, it's okay to get this money, but don't go buy. I've had people say, well, I want to, expand and do a build out with this money, or I want to buy a bunch of new equipment with this money, or I want to hire this expensive business coach with this money. Don't do that, y'all. Don't do that. That is not going to be looked kindly upon. Okay. Make sure you're using it for continuity of business. There are so many businesses out there that need this money because they need to survive. Don't take this money and then use it, to profit off of it. That's not the purpose of it. So that's just the important thing. But you can, you can pay yourself with it technically, right? You can use it for rent and mortgage payments. You can use it for obligations in your business that you're going to have in a few months from now that you're worried that you won't be able to make, right? It doesn't need to be spent over that 8 weeks. So that's what I would say with regards to deciding what you're going to use EIDL on. Okay. So that's really how it works. I do want to talk, because we're in this CARES Act right now. I'm going to jump over to something else here in a minute, but I do want to, because we're looking at this, I'm getting a ton of questions about what happens if I got the advance, right? Because the advances didn't come out in those 3 days. They're just showing up now. You already went ahead and got this PPP, right? You went and got your PPP money because you needed to get in line or you'd miss out. So now you have both. And you're like, what does this mean? Importantly, there is confusion here, and I'm going to address that. There is confusion here. There is not a 150% final answer I can give you on this, but I can give you my thoughts on it. So what it does say, and I don't have it up here right now, but for the loan itself, if you were offered an economic injury disaster loan, That's a secondary process. If you got the grant, the next process is they're going to consider you for the loan and potentially offer you an additional loan. It will be a loan. It's payable over 30 years at 3.75% interest. Okay. They will offer that to you. You don't have to take it, but they will offer it to you potentially if you qualify. All right. If you take the loan and you got PPP, it's clear that as long as you don't use those for the same purpose, you can get both of them, okay? And you can still have PPP forgiven and all of that. If you use the EIDL loan, if the whole point of you getting that loan was, say, for payroll, right? You and your PPP loan is obviously supposed to be for payroll, to be forgiven for the most part, then you could run into an issue where you would have to actually roll your EIDL loan into your PPP loan. But in most cases, the best thing is to say, look, these are for two different purposes. I'm going to use my EIDL for more operating cost type things over the next 6-ish months. I'm going to use PPP for payroll, rent, and utilities for the next 8 weeks, whatever it is. Document that they're different things. Now, some people have asked, well, can I use EIDL for payroll in August, like after my 8-week period? I would caution you not to have that be your official usage of it when you're recording what you officially use the funds on, because it does say, like, the example they give is, okay, if you got EIDL for payroll, you can't also get PPP for payroll. It doesn't say for the same period. That may be the case, but I would be safe and try to say, no, you know what? I'm using it for these other things. Remember, cash is fungible, y'all, though. I get this question all the time on, like, can I use it for this? No, you can't use that for an online course you want to buy. But if having money for your operating costs gives you frees up some more money for you to have money to go buy an online course, or for you to go have money to do a marketing campaign or whatever, you can still do those things. Not that you can't do those things. It's just if somebody comes back and asks you, what did you use the money on? That can't be your answer, right? So remember that cash is fungible. Remember how that works. That's kind of my thought there. But the confusion really is in the PPP and the EIDL advance. What the heck happens there? And I'm going to show you a couple of things, and then you can maybe decide what you think for yourself. But the truth of the matter is we don't know 100% because nobody yet has applied for forgiveness. That's not going to be able to happen until after the PPP loan period is over. After your 8-week period is over, then you can apply for forgiveness. And then we'll know for sure, or maybe if Treasury comes out and says definitively how they're going to handle this. But I'll show you what the CARES Act says, and I'll show you what the Treasury guidance says about that. Okay, CARES Act says, Section 6 down here, if you can see it. Whoops, there we go. It says, unemployment grant. If an applicant that receives an advance under this subsection, so you receive an EIDL advance, your $1K per employee, or is approved for, receives it, or is approved for the loan program under Section 7A, that's the PPP, okay? So if you receive under the subsection, transfer into, or is approved for the PPP loan, the advance shall be reduced from the loan forgiveness amount for a loan for payroll costs made under such Section 7A. What? What I think this is trying to say is, if you got an EIDL advance and you get the PPP loan, which is forgivable, if you get your PPP forgiven, then that EIDL advance reduces the amount of forgiveness. So, example with numbers. You get a $50,000 PPP loan. Let's say you use it completely correctly, right? You use your 75% or more for payroll. The rest you cover with rent and utilities for your business, right? So you would have gotten that whole $50,000 as a forgiven, right? So, but you also received 10,000. Let's say you got the full 10,000. You're a lucky duck. You got the full 10,000 EIDL advance. Instead of being forgiven for 50,000, you will be forgiven for 40,000 on your PPP loan. 10,000 will become a loan under the PPP terms, i.e., 2 years at 1% interest. It's pretty low interest, but it's a loan. That extra, so the advance, so the way you can look at it is actually that advance that I got really isn't mine to keep. I have to pay it back. So you either can pay it back right away if you're like, you know what, I don't want a loan. I don't want, like, some people are just like, no debt at all, which I appreciate. Now, don't give it back and then go spend a bunch of money on credit cards. Terrible idea. Use the 1% and keep that. But that's the presumption now, is that you will be required to reduce your forgiveness by that EIDL. So you can pay it back, or you can have it become a loan, whatever, if you get both. All right. So now, if you get the PPP and you don't actually get any of it forgiven, or if your forgiveness amount is less than your EIDL, it's not like you don't have to give back the whole EIDL, right? So let's say you would have only been forgiven $5,000 for your PPP for whatever reason, and you got a $10,000 EIDL advance, it's just going to reduce it by that $5,000. So you're going to still get to keep the other $5,000. You just can't double dip, if that makes sense. That's one of their kind of double dippings. But there's still some question there, because there are also other places that it talks about, as long as you don't use them for the same purpose, like the loan, right? Like that's definitely clear for the loan. As long as you're not using them for the same purpose, you don't have to do that. I am telling people, be prepared to have to pay back that advance if you get the PPP loan and have it forgiven. Okay. I'm telling people, be prepared for that. There is a decent chance that they're going to say, you know what, just show me that you used it on separate things. In reality, that may be what happens. And I'll show you even the guidance from, so this is in the interim final rule. Sorry, guys, I know we're getting technical, but I want to show people because I want you to be able to draw your own conclusions. This talks about basically what PPP can be used for, and then it talks about EIDL. But the point you want to see is if your EIDL loan was not used for payroll costs, it doesn't affect your eligibility for PPP. This is talking about the loan itself. If your EIDL loan was used for payroll costs, your PPP loan must be used to refinance your EIDL loan. Okay, so if you used EIDL for now, this is assuming you already got EIDL first. In most cases, it's the opposite for people, so that's why it's also confusing. But then here it says proceeds from any advance up to $10,000 on the EIDL loan will be deducted from the loan forgiveness amount on the PPP loan. So the question there is it only, is that going along with this, right? If your EIDL loan was not used for payroll costs, et cetera, or is this just saying regardless of what you used it for, you're going to have to reduce forgiveness? I would err on the side of assuming that it's that one. That I would rather you be more conservative and then be surprised and they're like, nope, you get to keep that advance too. And then you're like, yay, versus the opposite, which is going to happen, which is people will think that both are theirs. And then they're going to find out, nope, that reduces your EIDL advance you received is going to reduce your forgiveness. And then they're going to be like, well, shoot, I already spent that money. Now I got to pay it back. And it's going to be a totally different story. So I would rather you err on the side of conservatism, err on the side of, if you don't want that to become a loan, don't spend it. If you got both, okay? All right, that is my, and I know that's been a question I get over and over again, and I wish that I had a more specific answer and I could tell you 110% yes, 110% no. That's why I wanted to show you the guidance so that you could kind of decide for yourself what you think. Okay, all right. The other thing I want to talk about, so we talked earlier about the 10,000, and then I'm going to get to some of your questions. So I know I'm just talking, but there's a lot I wanted to cover on this topic because there's just a lot going on. So one other thing, remember we talked about that what's happening right now with the SBA is not what Congress intended. It's not 3 days. It's not the full $10,000. Well, there are some members of Congress that agree with that, and they're not super happy about what's happening with EIDL either, okay? So let me show you a little letter, and this was a letter that was sent to Mnuchin, basically. And is from mainly a bunch of the Democratic leadership. So this was sent to Mnuchin and the SBA, basically saying here's some, and there's a lot of different things in this letter that it's talking about, but specific to this, one of the things that they called out was EIDL. So I know you can't really see that. So let's zoom on in, okay? All right. What it says here is specifically under the CARES Act, emergency EIDL grants were to be made in amounts up to $10,000 within 3 days of receiving an application. However, SBA has taken much longer to disperse funds to businesses, you think? Furthermore, the Trump administration used its discretionary authority to severely limit these awards, permitting businesses to claim just $1,000 per employee. This means that currently a sole proprietor or a small family-run business with only 2 or 3 employees cannot receive the full $10,000 allowed under the statute. When SBA chooses to place arbitrary limitations on award amounts and ration available funding rather than request a new appropriation, as it was willing to do for PPP, it failed small businesses and small private nonprofits that had counted on these funds. How many of y'all are like kind of nodding your head a little bit, right? Like that seems fair to me. And I don't want to I do not get political on here. I don't want this. This isn't that. There was legislation. That legislation has not been followed. That's just the case, right? The legislation was bipartisan. Everybody agreed, but that has not been what has happened in practice, okay? So what it's saying now, they gave 10 billion more. So when the CARES Act, or when they did the most recent funding where they refunded PPP, they also refunded 50 billion towards EIDL loans and another 10 billion. Remember, they originally had 10 billion for advances. They gave them another 10 billion. And they said, with the new 10 billion in funding from EIDL that the interim COVID-19 Act provides, the administration should remove the limitations it imposed that previous businesses from receiving a full $10,000 grant. Businesses that have previously received reduced grants, some of y'all, because they have fewer than 10 employees, should receive the full amount, and going forward, new recipients should receive full awards as well, regardless of their size. Let's see. Further, to prevent the administration from once again refusing to request additional appropriations when the program is fully subscribed, SBA should notify Congress as soon as funds begin to run low, rather than cut the amount small businesses receive. In addition, it should dedicate the resources it has received from administrative expenses to ensure that loans go out within the statutory mandated 3-day timeframe. Y'all, this is just a letter, so I need to tell you. Some of y'all got real excited there. You're like, wait, am I going to get more? When is it coming? Is it, you're like checking your bank accounts right now. This is not anything that has been put into practice. This is simply a letter that was sent to Mnuchin saying, hey, y'all aren't doing this the way that you were supposed to do this as per what Congress passed. That's what this says. And it's calling for the immediate fix of this. Now, this letter went out on, let's see, April 25th. All right. Been almost 2 weeks at this point. Nothing has changed yet. Nothing has changed at this point. So important to take that with a grain of salt. I haven't even seen it as something that they're going to be discussing on the bills. So it maybe tomorrow we're going to wake up and have a bunch more money in our accounts, but more than likely not. So continue again. I always subscribe. Don't count on money that you don't know if you're going to get. Don't count on money just because somebody says they want to give it to you doesn't mean they're going to give it to you, right? And a lot of you guys are still waiting for your money from the first round. And you're like, man, I could just give me my $1,000, please. Like, can I just have that? That would be great. I've been sitting around waiting for that. So suffice it to say, there are still a lot of issues in this program. I have seen a lot more people getting their grants recently, but not all of them. A few things then. Now I'm going to jump back to just me. So that, all right. Okay. So what does this mean for y'all? What should you be doing? If you are still sitting there waiting for your grant, you applied, you haven't received anything, you maybe have gotten some blanket communications and you're like, what's going on? If you look and they checked your credit and it has been more than 3 to 5 days since they checked your credit, call the SBA, numbers on the website. You may have to ask for a tier 2 representative. Some people have better luck with them. Some people don't. They're getting all kinds of stories. So don't expect it's going to be super helpful, but at least call and check. Okay. Or even if you haven't had that credit check, but you applied before, say, the 4th or 5th of April at this point, if you applied before then, call and check. In some cases, what's happening is they haven't been able to vet. They tried to give you your money and then it didn't, like it bounced back or something like that with the banking account information, didn't fully align. Like maybe you are an LLC, but your bank account was under a personal social security number. That can cause an issue. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, but it can. So some of this they've bounced back. And so what I've heard is people are calling and they're like, oh, actually there was an issue with your banking account information. You're able to update it. But I haven't heard of anybody who updated it, then immediately getting it. Seems like they put you at the back of the line. Seems like it's like, okay, cool, updated. You're now, basically being treated as if you applied today. You're at the back of the line. So go ahead and do that and call. it may be really unhelpful and you may be just told, you know what, it's processing, just wait, but you also may have the opportunity to update your banking account information or get some information on what's going on. They're telling people all kinds of things though. So I'm going to tell you that, like, I'm hearing stories from people who are talking to the FSBA that are hearing completely conflicting things about it. So if you haven't gotten your grant and you're waiting on it, give them a call. The loans are a whole separate process that are taking quite a bit longer. So after you get your advance, then you got to wait a couple more weeks probably to hear anything on the loan. You will probably get an invite to log in via email. So check your email for the loan portion, and you will probably get an invite to go in and see what your offer is if you are offered a loan. And you may also get denied as well via email. So continue to check back on that and see if you have any emails about it. And it'll have a portal. You'll be able to log into the portal, see what your loan offer is, and kind of decide what you want to do. Another question I keep getting, can I turn down the loan and still keep the advance? It is technically an advance, right? It's an advance on the loan, but you can keep it even if you're denied for the loan. Logically, I don't think they have a process to take back people's grants. I don't think that's going to happen. I would err on the side of no. But is it impossible that they could say, well, okay, you said no to the loan, give me your advance back, you can't keep that? Maybe. I mean, if they just wanted to be really, if they want to be real sticklers about it, maybe. Here's my thought. Hopefully, you'll be able to ask that question. If you get a loan offer, hopefully you'll be able to ask that question. I don't know if even the SBA reps are going to know the answer, unfortunately, which is really unfortunate in all these situations. But if you're worried about it, remember this. There are no prepayment penalties on this money. If you think, and we don't know how long this is going to last. I am very anti-debt. I will say I am so anti-debt, even business debt, because I think that it's really hard to get it out from under. But if you potentially could see yourself 6 months from now, if things don't get a whole heck of a lot better, and if we're like doing this in, out, like, okay, we're out in the world. Oh, now we got to shut down again. This lasts. And you can see yourself struggling to figure out where to get money from, and you turn down this loan, right? And you turn down this money, and your only option at that point may be like just racking up credit card debt at 20+% interest. Please don't do that. Please do not do that. Take this money, put it in a bank account, and don't touch it unless you need it. Use it as emergency savings. And then 6 months from now, if things are fine and dandy, pay it all back. You will have no prepayment penalty on it, and you will have a small amount of interest. I mean, it's 3.75% over 30 years. Like, it's not going to be a whole heck of a lot of interest, depending on how big your loan is. You'd want to look into that and calculate it out based on your loan size, right? Because that number is going to be different for different people and whether that's too much for them to handle. But that's cheap emergency money to have. Don't touch it, though, unless you need it, right? Do not touch it unless you need it. That I will say 100 times, but I would so much rather you have that sitting there in case you need it as a safety net than be in a place where you're applying for new credit cards to, be able to pay, and then you're under debt that is just, it's going to crush you. And that is my advice to you. So worst case scenario, if they're like, nope, you have to take this loan, be like, all right, I'll take it and I'll keep it and not touch it, or I'll take it and pay it back the next day. If you're really, really anti-debt, great. Take it, pay it back the next day, right? And then we're all done. You get to keep your advance. So I don't think you're going to need to do that. I think that you will be able to turn it down, but until someone tells me they turned it down and they didn't ask for the advance back, I don't want to tell you that for sure. So if anybody is in that situation and has done that, let me know. Let me know. Okay, so that was a lot. I want to look real quick to make sure I covered all of this. This was supposed to be a shorter one. It never happens. Yeah, okay. I think I covered pretty much all of it. So, all right. So let's jump into questions really quick so I can answer some of those for you guys. Okay. So if you take it and not touch it, say for a year as an insurance policy, well, you have to show how you use it. So I don't know. Okay. So as far as showing what you use, if you get the loan, right? I told you with the advance, it's yours to keep. More than likely, nobody's going to come over your shoulder and ask you what you used it for. But you should still keep record anyway. If you took it and kept it and didn't touch it, right, and then paid it back, I wouldn't think there would be much to show. You see what I mean? Or, I mean, you can even show, like, here are the operating costs I paid over that time frame, whether you use that specific money or not. They're not going to, you can't track dollars. Somebody in the group said it, and I love it. I love the image of it. It's not like these dollars are orange and your other dollars are purple, and you can, like, track the, right? Like, as long as you had some operating costs, you could say, yeah, that's what I used it for, and now I'm paying it back. Or I don't see any reason that you couldn't say, I took it and then I didn't end up needing it, so now I'm giving it back, right? And again, when you give it back, like, more than likely, again, I don't know how this process goes in actuality, but it's not going to be like, show us all the things you use this on. It's just going to be like, great, thank you for the money back. There may be, you have to be available at any time if the SBA says, tell me what you're spending this money on. You have to be able to do that. And they could, if they have the authority to come in and audit at any point and be like, hey, show me what you're doing with this. Will they do that? Probably for a subset of people. Okay, so I wouldn't get too terribly worried about that. If you're doing, and a lot of people are just worried about, like, am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get in trouble? And as long as you're doing things in good faith. Hang on. So as long as you're doing things in good faith, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, you guys. Like, if you're sitting here trying to game the system, that's a different story. But if you're doing things in good faith because you need them, and you're like, I'm looking for opportunities for money, and you're not going to get, like, thrown in jail for this stuff. You're not going to get, huge penalties on you. Like, use this stuff in good faith the way it's meant to be used, and you'll be fine. Okay, funded twice, first through EIDL and then PPP, but they included my EIDL in my PPP. All right, so I'm going to jump on over here. Let's look at the application really quick. I think I have it up. I might have it up. Yeah, okay. So this is the PPP application. Real quick. So what I think is happening in some cases. All right. So what it's saying is you're supposed to put, average monthly payroll, right? Okay. We've talked about how to calculate that. I'm not going to get into, that's a whole separate live on the PPP, which I've done before. But if you do that, then you're supposed to take times 2.5 plus the EIDL. What that's doing in that case is rolling the EIDL you received ahead of getting PPP. Only if you received an EIDL loan ahead of getting PPP, it would be added onto your PPP. It's not going to be, it should not be extra money you actually receive. I don't think. It should just be, it's grossing it up. So it's essentially saying, okay, you're going to have to pay back that EIDL loan under your PPP, under the PPP terms. But this is a choice, so I'll show you in a minute what this means. But then net of advance, if applicable, equals the loan request. So net of advance means they're going to reduce the amount of your loan by the advance you got. Again, this is if you got the advance first before you applied for PPP, which most people, that isn't the case. But if you come down here to where it describes what the heck all that means, it says if applicant is refinancing, if they're refinancing an EIDL, add the outstanding amount of the EIDL made between those dates, and made between January 31st and April 3rd, 2020 is what the actual application says. So if you received it later, that shouldn't apply. Less the amount of any advance under the loan gets to that amount. But again, you only have to refinance. It's your choice whether you refinance an EIDL loan into PPP. The advance may not be a choice, but we don't know. So I don't know why they included EIDL in PPP. I'd have to know a little bit more about what you mean there. But I think some banks are doing this incorrectly. If I'm being totally honest, I think they're asking, and sometimes if you check the wrong box on the application, this is happening to people. So I would check in with your bank and see what's going on. But I have heard of a couple of people having their PPP amounts impacted by the EIDL in weird ways. So, okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, hang on. Let me come back to myself. Okay. If someone gets both EIDL grant and PPP, should the EIDL be recorded as a loan? I was thinking other income, but if it might have to be paid back. Yeah, so I have a thread out in the Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners group that talks specifically about how to record this. I think it's pinned up to the top. There's There's like a master list of different threads, okay? And if you look in that, there's one about recording, and I talk about PPP, but I think this one's linked. If it's not, I'll go make sure that it is. But I also talk about EIDL too. And if it is going to turn into a loan, you do want it on your balance sheet. If you don't get PPP and it isn't going to be a loan, then you want to put it, you can put it as like other income. I would have a separate account for it. That's the other thing I want to talk about. Almost forgot. Taxability of EIDL. Okay. Do we know? No, we don't know. They have not come out with anything that says whether it's taxable or not, but it's a grant. And in general, grants themselves can be taxable, right? The amount of the grant is taxable, or it can be a non-taxable grant. But, and here's the kicker, and this is what's happened with PPP. Okay. For those of you who followed that, for PPP, they came out and said any amount forgiven becomes a grant and you don't have to pay taxes on it. And you're like, awesome, fantastic, that's amazing. And then the IRS came back to rain on the parade and say, actually, that's fine. Yeah, the income's not taxable, but any amounts you pay, right, any expenses that you pay with that non-taxable grant money cannot be deducted on your taxes. So what that means is it's the same thing as if the income was taxable, because you just can't deduct the amounts you paid. So it's just kind of a roundabout way of making it taxable. Just is. And that's how grants typically work. I mean, to be fair, typically grants work that way. It's very rare to find something that's completely has no tax consequences to it when you're getting money, right? So with the EIDL, then I'm foreseeing a similar thing where either the EIDL is going to be taxable as income itself, or it's not going to be. But if it isn't, anything you pay with that EIDL then becomes a non-deductible expense. And therefore, it's essentially like as if it was taxable. So what does all that mean? What the heck am I even talking about? Set aside money for taxes. If you got $1,000 for your EIDL, and you want to make sure, and I always recommend this, make sure that you have money for your taxes and that it's not a surprise at the end of the year and that you've saved appropriately for it. Go set up a smartypig.com account if you don't have one. It is a great area where you can actually go in and set up little savings goals for yourself. And it's personal in nature, but you can put a savings goal for your taxes. That's what I do. So you can put, the amount is really going to depend on your personal financial situation, right? So if you're typically in a net loss position, or you expect to be, well, it's not going to be, you're not going to have to set aside a whole bunch of taxes. But if you usually have a profit situation, you're going to need to set aside, call it 25 to 30% of that amount to make sure that you have it. I would rather you do that so that you have the money set aside, so that, again, I think this is going to be a cluster at the end. This is going to be a cluster now. This is a cluster 8 weeks from now when people have to apply for forgiveness, and that's crazy. And then this is going to be a cluster when it comes tax time, when we're trying to figure out what the heck to do with all of this government money and how it impacts your taxes. So again, I take the conservative route. Make sure you're saving, make sure you're putting money aside and not assuming that this is all 100% free money, right? There's two things that are certain in life, y'all: death and taxes. Okay. It's going to get taxed. So that's what I would assume in this scenario. Could Congress come in, and I think for PPP, hopefully they will. I don't know about EIDL, but could they come in and say, no, we're going to make this completely non-taxable. It's a non-event. Yeah, they could, but there's some accounting consequences that come along with that too. So, it's possible. It's possible. And I'm hopeful on that for PPP. I don't know about EIDL. Set aside the money. Don't spend it all. If you're worried about it. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have? Let's see. Some of you guys are applying to each other. So, so I think a lot of you guys are getting, so somebody called, I called to check, and all they told me was my app. Yeah. So you're getting that, but and what I would say is that that's going to be their answer. make sure you ask for a tier 2. Talk to 2 people. Ask the same question to 2 people. See if they give you the same answer. I recommend that. Sometimes they're telling people that tier 2 people don't exist. They do. I heard somebody say that they were telling him, no, that line has been disconnected, and then they sent him to a tier 2 person, and a person picked up. So anywho, they're telling all kinds of things, but talk to 2 people before you believe what is being said. And once those 2 people tell you the same thing, great. In a lot of cases, if your banking account information does have an issue, then they'll be able to fix it. So at least if you called and they said it's in queue, and if you've got 2 people to tell you that, then you're probably fine. And you got to hang tight, unfortunately. Lainey's got the SBA number up here. Write that down, y'all. Let's see. And then Jamie, y'all are awesome. Y'all are just like sharing all the things I'm sharing. So I think that's the letter to Mnuchin, Jamie said. You guys are fab. So be prepared to pay back grant money for EIDL as well as any loan money. Is that correct? I got the EIDL advance 2 weeks ago and used it all for payroll. I just got my PPP loan today and plan on using and documenting for payroll as well. You're probably going to have to, in this case, yeah, you're probably going to have to roll that grant money. It's going to reduce your PPP forgiveness. So treat it as such, right? Know that amount won't be free, but it can still be a loan at a low interest rate. So it's just double dipping, right? They don't want you to get the same free money twice. Okay. Let's see. Oh, good. Okay. EIDL. What's going on right now? They're not taking applications. The only applications they are taking, they just reopened it. They are taking applications for agriculture businesses only right now. So if you didn't get your application in before, right now, you're SOL, technical term, SOL. And maybe it will open up later. Again, there are other programs though. So I say SOL, but look at unemployment, look at PPP, look at some of these tax credits that are available. If you're still paying people, there's the employee retention tax credit. There are other things available. And I do foresee potentially more new programs coming out in the future as well, depending on what happens. But with the EIDL, you may not be able to apply. We don't know if they're going to open it up again. We don't know if they're going to open the portal back up. We will see. They are still, I think the reason they haven't is because they don't know how much money they have, right? So right now they're gauging money because they've got to get through, okay, how many advances do we have to give out? And they got to process those and then see how much they have left. Same thing with the loans. And these do seem to be 2 separate processes. So that's also confusing, is that some people are getting denied for a loan and then getting an advance like 3 days later. And they're like, well, wait, what's going on? It seems like they're processing the loans through one department and the advances through a different one, and they don't necessarily talk. So that's kind of an interesting part of this too, is that interplay. But yeah, I mean, we don't know if they're going to take any more. They're trying to see how much more money they have before they open it up again, I think. And remember, once they open it up, then it's like weeks and weeks and weeks and months before people are going to be able to get this. So I'm like, man, at this rate, like businesses that needed money like 2 months ago are going to get it in like September, you know? I mean, what's going on here, you guys? They have got to get it together. And I know that people themselves are working hard. I just think the processes that have been put in place are not working clearly. Let's see. Okay. So I can't really tell y'all. I see a lot of you guys kind of talking to each other through here. So this was back when, okay? So we gotta remember 2 different things. So what I was trying to explain is, for the EIDL loan, it is clear that if you use them differently from PPP and EIDL loan, you just have to prove they're not for the same purpose. The clarity, where the clarity is missing is the advance, is the grant. And in that case, even if you use them for different purposes, you may still, and probably will, at this point, I'm leaning towards probably will, have to reduce, like your PPP forgiveness will be reduced by the amount of that EIDL advance, because both of those are free money, and they're not going to give you 2 sources of free money. Now you can still use it as a loan. That's the difference. So the same purpose thing for sure, the loan itself, the EIDL loan itself, and the PPP just have to be different purposes. The advance they may say, you know what, you can't get that free money twice. It seems like that's what's going to happen. But until people start applying for forgiveness and seeing what the banks say, and again, until they come out with like really definitive guidance, different banks may treat it differently. And some banks may force you to take it off your PPP forgiveness and some may not. And that's the problem I'm seeing with the banks right now, is that it's very varying how they're handling things. So that's a little disconcerting. EIDL loan to pay off credit card debt for being shut down. Generally, yeah. I mean, if it's business credit card debt that you had that is general business expenses, it doesn't go to the fact that it's credit card debt. It's what did you use that? What is that debt for? What were you paying with those credit cards, right? So like, if what you were paying with those credit cards are allowable expenses under EIDL, then yes. If they aren't, if they're, I don't know, most things would be, right? But if they're again, if you put a bunch of new equipment, maybe on your credit card, although even in that case, if that's something you did prior to all this, it probably should count. Okay. Yes, 100%. If you don't get PPP, you can use EIDL for payroll to your heart's content. You can use it to pay yourself. Other question I've been getting, and that leads me into a good question. Can I get PUA, i.e. expanded unemployment, and EIDL? Does EIDL impact PUA? So we know PPP does. In general, it does. Getting a lot of questions about that, but you should be prepared not to be able to get unemployment if you get PPP. But with EIDL, right? The PPP is a payroll loan. There's an implication that you're paying yourself with that. EIDL is an operating cost loan. You can use it for payroll, including to pay yourself, right? If you're on payroll or even if you're a sole proprietor, theoretically. But the thing that gets difficult with EIDL, there's nothing that says, and I would check your state FAQs to see if they address this at all, because remember, states can make whatever rules they want around this, which is also making it difficult from an unemployment perspective. They can make their rules. So different states are having different stances on different things with relating to this government funding. But my belief is, take a grain of salt, right? My belief, my interpretation would be EIDL is for operating costs. If you use it for operating costs in your business, it's not going to impact your unemployment claim. If you use it to pay yourself, that's amount you would have to claim for unemployment. Simple as that. It gets a little bit more sticky with sole proprietors who don't pay themselves on payroll, right? I mean, again, it's a little bit tougher. But theoretically, if that money is in good faith going to be used for operating costs in your business, then you should not have to claim it for unemployment. Again, take it with a grain of salt, check your state FAQs, call your state if you really want to deal with that. Okay. So I've gotten to most of the questions, I think, and some of these I think I've addressed after the question was asked. So I won't go back through. It's tough to read them all. Yeah, lots of you guys are still waiting. You're not the only one. It's crazy. 3 days is laughable. I laugh so I don't cry, y'all. But I do want to tell you guys to keep hope. There may be new programs. It's not impossible that they could decide, what, we're going to give everybody the 10,000, woohoo, and then we're all going to have a big party, and it's going to be great. We'll see. We'll see. And I know that doesn't feel good right now. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. As I always say, I want you guys to stay as positive as you can given the moment. Don't get caught down in the depths. Don't let this, all of this craziness affect your daily life. Find gratitude, find joy where you can. I'm going to keep showing up here to give you the information that I can about all of this. That's something that I've committed to this community for. So keep checking back. But don't get pulled down by it. There's help. It may be taking a while. The processes may be awful. It may be confusing, but I do believe that there is help to be had. And I think we're going to get through this. So thanks, you guys. I'm going to go. I'm about to hit my hour, and I will talk to you later. Keep asking your questions in the group, and I will keep on answering them. Bye, guys.